Good evening, KZFR. Welcome, welcome. Tonight we have a new guest, Michael Waltz, born in Martinez, California, moved to Chico, married a local gal, and set down roots here. He studied English and poetry and plays as a drummer. So he's been on KZFR a couple times, but not reading his poetry, and a couple different music events with his bands. So I'm really excited. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good.
All right.
Do you have any shout outs before we begin that you'd like to reach out to?
Well, I'd love to shout out to my wife, Amy, to my mom, Mary, and to my family. Love you.
Hello, and thanks for bringing Mike to me today. Thanks, guys. Before we begin, we have a book that we're reading, a collection of poems.
Yes.
Okay, collection of poems. And is this your first or 500th publication?
This is my first publication.
Yes, I love first publications on the show. It's so much fun.
Nice and fresh.
Cool, cool. How recently fresh?
I had a reading last night. It was my first one with the book, actually. So recently just got it, and here it is.
I have a copy right here, and I think it's still warm from the press right now. So
Probably.
Very, very, very fresh.
Yeah.
And I had one more question. It's escaping me, but it doesn't matter. We have a lot of poetry to get to tonight. Would you like to dive in?
Sure, I'll dive in.
Oh, I remember the question.
What's that?
Where can we find this book if you'd like to buy a copy?
Yeah, well, I self-published through Amazon, so it's on Amazon. But locally here, I'm going to be putting it in the bookstore downtown.
And maybe some few plans if you have any other places you can get to too. But the bookstore and Amazon right now, if anyone wants a copy.
Yeah.
The title is To Find Their Way Together, Poems by Michael Waltz.
Yeah, so I'll start with the title poem. This was my editor was Gary Thompson, who is my poetry professor at Chico State, and as I tend to title things kind of on the nose, he kind of in the editing kind of sought out at one point, returned some notes to me, and this is your title right here. I think it captures the kind of journey. Most of the poems have. They're not all happy. Some are sad. Some are. They're all love poems. I like to think, in one way or another, in some spectrum of love, whether it's a sensual, romantic love or a tragic love. It's all flavors of that, I think.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So this poem is about. One night, we live up in Richardson Springs, and there was a storm one night, and we could hear geese outside. It was a really odd, weird that the wind was blowing, and you could hear them kind of cut through the wind. And this is what happened. It's called And What Remained. From our bed, we hear it begin, far out in the distant air, a rush gaining speed, balling up like a clenched fist that breaks over us in a shattering thump, driving us further down beneath our covers, together under each crescendo. We imagine back to when waves would have rolled wild over this place, a wind that caressed them like hands and lips of a feverous lover, until dream and sleep submerge us. Calm arrives, touching the sea foam, smooth in the hissing remains of currents dying out. And on our horizon, distant cries, wayward answers sounding out to stay together, to find their way together. I have stood on the hillside before, in the fog of spring, and heard them, surprised with the sudden rushing of a tired flock cutting through air. Almost as one bird. Quiet parting of the mist, so low on the treetops I could hear the labored breathing. But tonight it is the calling, a gravity that pulls us back awake like our son's voice at our bedroom door. Echoes from the night's deep walls, drifting in on the calm mercied breeze, lost and circling above us. When in the morning, tide receded, I walked out to the fields and saw white feathers in the rocks, wings still stretched as if in flight, and the cold palette of green moss and lichen, framing the silk down, pulled aside, the red wound still bright, a taken life and what remained. Did they know, as all things must someday know, the price and balance measured out, delivered to the hungry eyes and waiting teeth that caught them in that sudden struggle among the buckbrush? Did they take to flight blindly and rush into the sky, rising up and gathering together again to find their way north? Did they circle back, sounding out the call until they knew, as all must know, how cries become thank you in the circle growing and farther on become goodbye?
Oh, wow. I did not see this poem going in the direction that it went. This is beautiful.
Right on, man. Thanks.
Yeah. And also, the beginning portion, this first page here, I just want to say a personal thank you. I feel like not enough people sit in a moment, in a present moment with themselves, and think about how much has gone through the space that they're sitting in, how large of a time has been, and what has been going on in that. That, to me, really frames a moment in some ways. Sitting there thinking about something, well, not even frames, it gives some gravitas to the moment for me to go, wow, this has been here a while, and I'm part of a moment that's traveling through.
Yeah.
That really shapes how I look at where I'm standing in that moment.
Yeah.
So really good job capturing that.
Thanks. The waves image, the where we live on the ridge there, seems like the weather's always pretty gnarly sometimes, and at night in the big rainstorms you can hear the wind kind of building up like big waves, and it's a great place to live. And
Yeah.
Love it.
Wow. And
Yeah.
I have to ask, so was this poor bird that passed away, do you think it was from an attack? Was it from the storm?
Oh no, it was attacked. It was
Really mauled?
no, it was interestingly placed. I thought it was a bag when I drove up to my house. I looked off in the rocks and I thought, oh, the garbage blew over and something's out there. And I walked out and it was kind of spread eagle or spread goose as it was.
Yeah.
And it was, it was perfectly white, and there was a perfect incision, and yeah, everything was gone, and it was red, and it was fresh, and it was a pretty profound moment.
Yeah. No, especially after hearing such a delicate, like, oh, how beautiful in the night.
It was, and it was beautiful when I found him, and then it was like, okay, well, there was obviously something went down.
A sudden struggle among
Yeah.
the brush. Beautiful, beautiful piece too. It's hard to find pieces that go from just such a beautiful, thankful place and remain in that space even through death, all the way to the end. This is a really, really well done on this.
Thank you.
piece. Yeah.
Appreciate all that.
Oh, I know we have more, so I'll stop talking.
Sure, no. I've got a few more. So I'm going to switch to a love poem. A lot of these poems took a while to write, and they went through various stages of editing. This poem kind of came all at once. This is a poem called Orchard Poem, and I kind of came from, it's a love poem to my wife, and the idea came because where I grew up in Martinez, we had a persimmon orchard, and there were lots of persimmons, and we used to go pick them and have to pick them and deal with them, and ended up in persimmon fights when they got with my brothers when they got real ripe. Orchard Poem. How many poems do you want, are left, are waiting to shine, fall around us, will spread out, take root, find home, wake up within, draw the sky, sleep in until, whisper I love you, remember your smile, sit in the quiet and follow the dream to its end. There won't be any left when I'm done out in the orchard. I will pick the trees of every one from the high branches where I will climb, unsteady and scared, to even the overripe and soft on the ground, up from the frost to my cold hands, and put them in my shirt like a fat man's belly stretched and strained, back to the house, back to you. And in the stainless pantry sink, we will wash away the dirt and leaves, all the words that we don't say anymore. hold them up to the window, to each other, bruises and wormholes, naked, shimmering, and pure again.
Oh my goodness. I am enamored with your writing style.
Right
I
on.
love the merger of a beautiful childhood memory with this as a much more adult memory to someone. Oh, it's fun to read. It feels like taking a drink of fresh water.
Right on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
How did your wife like
She
this one?
likes them. Yeah, she likes my poems. Luckily.
I imagine she would. I mean, I would laugh if you were like, no, she didn't like this one at all.
No, I've written her lots of poems, and they work.
More to come from this one.
Yeah, I'll read another one. Here's a short love poem that I wrote to my wife.
Before you dive into,
Yeah.
just again, because this one is, you can't just walk away from that one that quick,
Okay.
man. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness,
no,
it's too good.
sure.
This one is like looking at a gem. I'm trying to figure out which part of the gem I'd like to talk about. I just wanted to take note of how well-rounded this piece is. You ended this delightfully, perfectly with like renewal. I love that is a staple or a fixture of love is renewal, in my opinion. I think that is something that comes hand in hand with love because you're always finding new things about the person you're with, all kinds of stuff, and it just continues to grow as it renews itself. And you captured that so well in this. So I just wanted to point that out.
Right on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. I've got another one here. This is called On the Vine. And it goes like this. Oh, I want to mention one thing before I start.
Yeah.
The illustrations in this book are all hand-painted by a young lady named Aita Gay. And she is the granddaughter of a very dear friend of mine. And she's, I think she's all of 17. She grew up, she started here, but then she grew up in Senegal. And she would watercolor cards and sell them on the streets in Senegal and Dakar. And once I saw her paintings, I was like, hey, you want to paint some stuff for this book? And gave her the poems and let her kind of find stuff and suggested things. And she just did a marvelous job.
Yeah, no kidding. I actually was going to ask you about that afterwards because I figured it was watercolor. I could see some of what trademark watercolors or some, well, it looks like water on the page sometimes.
Yeah.
But they are like things out of museums. This is beautiful artwork.
Yeah, we're looking at, for all of you in Radio Land, we're looking at a picture of a blackberry, or a painting of a blackberry. And it's amazing. Aita is an extremely talented young lady, and it's an honor to have her do all the imagery for my book. It really made it special.
Yeah, extremely vivid. And thank you, Aita.
Aita.
Thank you. And if you want to see this, purchase the book.
Yeah.
Okay, please continue.
Okay, so this is called On the Vine. It's a love poem to my wife again. Blackberry on the vine, let your sweet way find itself here. We'll throw out the long planks deep between the bushes to reach the ripest fruit, and fill our hands with treasures untouched to taste on our lips. When it spills out onto the fingers, soaks the skin, staining them red, lust and wanting more. And the moment took itself, late in the summer, spreading onto the page, like you, wide and open, on the picnic blanket. You took off your dress and painted yourself with the juice of each berry.
Oh my goodness. So for me, for anyone reading, I don't think I've described it this way, but when I hear a poem that I'm like, wow, this really resonates well, it's something akin to as if you were watching someone hit a home run, like just a crack, just wow, that's amazing. That's what I'm feeling from this one right now.
Oh, thank you.
All of these. I love your association with nature and all this stuff, rooting it back to that. That is a very strong theme in what we've read so far.
Yeah.
And I mean, it goes so well with what you're talking about. Love and nature do tend to go hand in hand because is love nature, is nature love. It goes both ways, but oh my goodness, this is such a sensual piece.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was a nice one to write.
Yeah.
It's always it always is a great feeling when you can get something out and get it done and finished, and it kind of stands on its own, and you're like, yeah.
And
yeah.
and at least for me, after you read this, I live for the moments when I have someone in the studio with me, where as I'm reading, I find myself smiling, unknownst to my conscious brain. It just
Right.
kind of comes out. That's when I'm like, oh, this is really hitting me. This is awesome. And by the last two stanzas, I was grinning ear to ear. This was such a good piece.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So I'm going to jump around here. I'm going to go to a poem that I wrote at a time where I felt a bit lost, and it has some history in it. I will say that when I grew up in Martinez, I lived out in a valley, much like Honey Run Road or up there, and when I was young, my parents were going through divorce, and I found solace in the dark. I would go out and wander around in the dark, and I knew the valley so well that it was comforting to me.
Yeah.
So this is about that. Forgot. Mom tells the story how she gathered us up, 5 kids, into the Buick wood panel station wagon for a trip to the city, only to discover on arriving that they left me alone in my car seat, not even a year old, on the red square linoleum floor of our kitchen. We laugh about it now, but I can tell she was horrified. Or the carnival night in the churn of running children, time to go, watching from under my mask the last taillights pull away into the autumn night. Voices and noise flew like a startled flock until there was no one. Just the sudden quiet. The only thing to do was hide under the juniper bushes next to the cafeteria parking lot and the John Swett Elementary sign, waiting for someone to remember me. And when I escaped along the pavement, it was scarier under the streetlights. At the turn of the valley road, the light ended, and darkness wrapped around me like the arms of an old friend. Knowing I was hidden, I felt safe within it, counting each step of the miles ahead to home. She was horrified again. Dad forgot me too, but his was a choice. Long before I was aware, he was already gone, often enough that I could expect it and pull a curtain over my heart. To slow the wearing down, tread on a shoe, cuts into the butcher's block, winter's carving of creeks and canyons, casual lies and empty goodbyes. These things taught my heart to break, to learn that what should love and stay forgets. Now midlife sets in, and sometimes she forgets too. Indifference creeps like vines over our windows, turns away from kisses, adds up to pillows between us when we sleep, and deflated sighs hang. Until we remember where whispers ran like a spring across the years, to taste a name, her name, my name, and a breath, and yes, and yes. And when that leaves me, the valley road and the black night wait just beyond, to cover me, to walk me home. But I'm not that child anymore, and the way home forgets too, all of those things. The middle-aged man holding out under the juniper bushes, waiting for headlights.
This poem made me laugh and then slowly just tighten my gut more and more and more, which was beautiful. I was, the first page here, she was horrified again. I was laughing pretty heavily, and then you turn the page. Dad forgot me too, but his was a choice. And I was like, oh, I've just been punched. Oh my goodness. That one hit really, really deep.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for that too, because that one has some emotion to it. It felt like to me.
Sure.
But
yeah.
It's been a long time, I'm sure. But
yeah. Well, it has, and it's just it really. I think this poem, I don't want to give my mom or dad a bad rap.
no, of
in
course
it.
not.
but it really was just a moment of feeling lost and forgotten a little bit in life, and I go back to those experiences as kind of the I don't know, the pattern setting or the template for my feelings.
Yeah. And this is such a good articulation of, even though this might have been a moment when you were a little bit lost and confused, there was clarity within that because you were able to put this down and describe what you're talking about. And honestly, the stanza where you are talking about your father, that is such an honest section of this piece. I mean, I don't typically shed tears on my own radio show and stuff like that. But this one definitely started leaning me towards that direction pretty hard. It's very, very honest, and honesty is usually what wears down my heart.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've been told that, but I was two other contributors to this book, Joanne Allred and Susan Brown. Susan made that comment to me about this poem. She's like, "This is a very honest poem, and the truth sometimes is the thing that really resonates." And that's really, I think, what people can relate to. They in their own life, while they may not have experienced everything in that poem, there's probably something in there.
Yeah, and I find two things. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself. One, I'll go back a little bit. I just want to make a note because I think it's beautiful. Quite well practiced in your reading, I will say too.
Thanks.
A lot of people rush certain parts on their own pieces, even if they've done it a million times. People tend to rush on some things, but yours is cadenced out, well done, and that lends to the weight of the story that you're telling within it. Really well done. That adds some shininess to it. That's people often miss.
All right.
Yeah. It helps when it's your own pieces, I find, too.
Yeah.
If someone else is reading it, sometimes I'll get like, where am I taking the breath with this? How is that? It helps when you're reading your own stuff.
Yeah. But, well, I've had to practice them because I'll crack up at them when I read something that's a little emotional.
Yeah.
And, you have to kind of step back for a minute and just read the lines.
But still, within that, you don't become monotone and droll, because I find that people will do that, and then they insulate themselves so much from their own emotion within it. It doesn't come out sounding as it's being read. It doesn't match the words.
I'll tell you that watching Gary Thompson read, you can learn more about poetry just by watching him and listening to him read a poem. And same with Susan Brown and Joanne Allred. They're all master poets, and so I've been really fortunate to have those people around.
I think I've had Susan on, once.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. So hello, Susan, and to everyone else that's been mentioned.
Susan.
Come on the show and interview Michael here. It'd be fun.
Yeah. So we might have time for another one?
I think so. Probably our last one, then we'll kind of tail it in.
So I got 3 long ones. Let's see.
Dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice. I'll read the one. I'm going to read the one about my mom.
Oh, good.
Because this book's dedicated to her. This is a poem called Plum Blossom. I cracked last night reading it, so I'm going to do my best.
Take a good breath.
Take a little sip of water.
And I'll pull you back. Thank you so much. We are not at the end of the show yet, but thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime. And I'm hoping maybe a part 2 possibly one day.
Certainly.
For another book or more in dive on this one. But I do this show in my own time. I'm not paid for it. This is all volunteer. But my most favorite thing about it is getting to walk along someone's life with them and hear the honesty that comes from their perspective of their existence. So thank you for sharing that with me today.
Sure. This poem is called Plum Blossom. Aunt Alice gave you that name, 5 petals to the flower, and as many children too, if you don't count the one that didn't make it. But you always did. To break yourself first through the snowdrifts and shock pink and rich the coming spring to a sleeping world. Tell me more stories, and I'll tell them too. Pour the wine or the whiskey and share them one more time. Stealing horses in the high meadows just below the cabin to ride the day with Brother Billy. Of your childhood in Hollywood, swimming in W.C. Fields' pond, running with the Waynes and the Disneys, and cutting your hand on the porcelain handle in Jack Dempsey's bathroom as the air raid sirens wailed on VJ Day. You were almost discovered by your screen test with the pre-Rock Hudson, but Granddad wouldn't fix your teeth, and we all know what happened to Rock. How you were a bass drummer as a girl and the homecoming queen at Loyola. Tell me about when I was being born that stormy November night, how I got stuck and the anesthesiologist climbed over your shoulders to push on your belly, teaching me harmonies in the wood panel station wagon, on the front seat watching you for my cues, dancing in the living room, showing me how to surrender myself to rhythm and song. Or that bar fight in Cabo San Lucas, you were laughing when broken glass shimmered in slow motion dreams, diamonds brilliantly falling over us, until I grabbed your hand and we ran laughing and amazed. And as Ophelia, dressed in your nightgown for the festival, only to drown in lane 4 of the Forest Hills pool for our skit, The Shakespearean Olympian. I can still feel that hug you gave me at the kitchen table the day Scott Lepak died. When I went long hair, we smoked reefer in the redwood hot tub, took me to jazzercise, took me to church, taught me to find myself and hide my tracks, showed me how to be afraid and to gather myself for a fight. To harness my fear like those high meadow horses and ride it. To pick up the pieces that matter and mend them, and to forgive myself through laughter. Winter snow retreats, and I don't know what's to come. I'll take every story again from the start and follow the branches to the end, to where all things are born again, and wait for you there.
Well, when I said I don't cry on my own show, I guess I'm becoming more honest with my emotions, because this piece is definitely bringing some tears to my eye.
Right on.
You have, I don't want to say captured, because I don't think that's the word for it, but you have really done a beautiful job of outlining the impact your mother has brought to your life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it is beautiful. I think my favorite parts on this are, hold on. Taught me to find myself and hide my tracks, showed me how to be afraid and how to gather myself for a fight, to harness my fear like those high meadow horses and ride it. I think that is, well, and then continuing, I can't finish without reading, I have to read all of it, to pick up the pieces that matter and mend them, and to forgive myself through laughter. If that's not one of the most healthiest relationships captured in a moment with those lines right there, I couldn't define one more.
She was, well, when I was young, she was a great example of when my parents divorced, Dad left and she was left with 5 kids. So she was a great example and is a great example of somebody who, picks themselves up and finds a way to get through things and, is very inspirational. She's a very inspirational woman.
Well, I want to dive more on this. However, we only have a few minutes left. So maybe in a quick minute, if you can compile and compose some advice to new writers who are coming in, how to be honest in your poetry.
Well, how to be honest in your poetry. I think it's a matter of just, I think the best advice I could give is the best advice that I've gotten, and that is to really learn how to not self-edit when you're writing, is to get it all out on the page, even the stuff if you think, no, wait, stop. You have to kind of unburden that and let it flow. And that's not to use term, but to really get it out on the page and let the voice that's inside of you that's talking to you, because a lot of times that's what it is. I'm hearing it in my head, and you got to get it all out on the page without stopping it and editing it and going, well, no, did I mean that, or I should change that? Just move on and come back to that later.
Oh, thank you, Michael. And again, sorry, this is cutting it short so quickly, but To Find Their Way Together, Poems by Michael Waltz. You can find it in the bookstore and on Amazon and maybe more stores coming soon. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.